Sonoma, California, in the Brown Hills north of San Francisco, the heart of California wine country. It's the home of Sears Point International Raceway and site of round 12 in the IMSA GTP Championship for 1989. Hello again, everyone. I'm Bob Varsha, welcoming you to Sears Point, where it has been an enormously sad weekend for all of us here at ESPN. Tom Blackhaller, America's Cup skipper and veteran Camel Lights race driver, was to have joined us in the announce booth for today's race. But tragically, last Thursday, while practicing to run an event here at Sears Point, Tom suffered a heart attack and passed away later that day. Our hearts go out to his wife, Chris, and the rest of Tom's family at this time, and we dedicate this broadcast to our colleague's memory. Nevertheless, there is a race to run today, and here with me to bring it to you, veteran IMSA car owner and Sears Point race winner, Rob Dyson. And Rob, with a Jaguar and a Nissan on the front row, this should be gangbusters.
Yeah, there's a lot at stake here today in this race. You've got two teammates, Chip Robinson and Jeff Brabham, running for a championship. And at the same time, you have two manufacturers, Jaguar and Nissan, fighting for a manufacturer's championship. Those ingredients, plus a lot of drivers here, want to do well at this race. It should make for a terrific event.
There was a little change of plan here in the Jaguar camp. Originally, Jan Lammers was supposed to be starting the race. Instead, Price Cobb is going to be starting the car. Do you prefer the first stint or the second stint?
Well, probably neither, really, because there's a great deal of pressure for both. But I think they felt guilty. I think they felt guilty from San Antonio since I didn't get to drive either car, so they figured they ought to put me in.
Price Cobb starting on the pole.
Hey, Price.
Meanwhile, the man starting alongside Price Cobb is going to be this one, Jeff Brabham. Going to be a typical day at the office, right? All he has to worry about is a manufacturer's championship, also a points battle. Jeff, I guess the big question is, what is the strategy going into the race? Which is more important right now?
Well, I think we're just going to go out and do the best we can. That's going to be a very difficult race, and I think it's going to be critical on which teams chose the right tires and how they set the car up for the sunshine. So, you know, hopefully we've done a good job at that, but I think the Jaguar's going to give us a hard run today, so it's going to be flat out all the time.
One advantage Jeff Brabham might have, he's going alone. Could be quicker on the pit stops. Bob?
We're on board with Bob Wallach carrying one of our two in-car cameras today. The other will be aboard Jeff Brabham's Nissan in the number 2 spot. Wallach is gridded number 6, and you see just how close together these cars get as we get ready for the start. The cars have now formed up. It is Jaguar and Nissan across the front row as the green flag waves and we go racing. Price Cobb will take the early lead over Chip Robinson. Jeff Brabham falls in line with the identical 83 Nissan. It is Cobb, Robinson, Brabham. Excuse me, and the 83 car has moved into second. It is Brabham that made a terrific start and took over second place. Third, we've got a problem right at the top of the hill. The number 6 car, a brand new Porsche, fielded by a couple of, well, rookie GTP drivers. Greg Pickett, a former Trans Am sedan champion from Alamo, California. This is Bruce Canepa's car, previously owned by Bruce Levin's Bayside team and by Bernard Jourdain, the IndyCar Rookie of the Year this year. A total ground-up restoration. They're learning the car here at the racetrack, and they've got a problem early on. Meanwhile, up front, you saw the Jaguar Price Cobb out front. This is the defending Camel GT champion, driving one of the world's finest race cars, a car that he knows better than any man on the planet, Australian Jeff Brabham, and you are aboard the Nissan 300ZX Turbo.
Price has really got the bit in his teeth. They've allowed him to start the car because I think they wanted to let a racer race for a change, which I think is commendable. It's the way we always did it, and it's important to let a guy have his lead. Price is doing a good job. He's pulled out a pretty good lead already.
Price Cobb drove for Rob Dyson's Porsche team, finishing second, and third, and Brabham got right up. I think he might have clonked one of the tire barriers. You saw a quick left-right shift in the steering wheel. So Jeff Brabham getting off to a rocky start here. Chip Robinson runs 4th, Jochen Mass 5th, and the Jaguar, the number 60 car, the V12 of John Nielsen, is off the racetrack.
That's Davy Jones in the car, and it's a little bit early to be doing that kind of stuff.
Jones and Nielsen from Denmark will share this machine, and it's a rough start for them as well. And one of the Camel Lights cars is also off the racetrack. This is all down in the turn 11 area where the Bondurant driving school here has its skid pad found to be a little bit slicker, and so Scott Atchison, an IndyCar veteran from Bakersfield, California, has also had an off and on. And there is the Porsche of Bob Wallach off the racetrack. That's down in the turn 7 area. We're having trouble keeping anybody's wheels on the ground here. You're on board with Bob Wallach as he recovers from the spin, the Group C ace from Strasbourg, France. And that will put him a couple of places further back. Now let's go back and see one of these incidents up close. The Jaguar, number 60 of Davy Jones and John Nielsen at the back of your screen, slides out of 11 and almost gets into the wall.
Davy was trying to get around Jochen Moss, who's driving the Bayside car, number 86, and he was just trying to get on the accelerator a little quick to get a shot, and again, you put the accelerator on too quickly coming out of that corner, and you're going to put the car around. It's as simple as that.
There is Bryce Cobb with a quick 3-second lead over Jeff Brabham in the Nissan. Michael Rowe, the Irish driver, standing by to relieve either Robinson or Brabham with the Nissan team. They drove together at the 24 Hours of Daytona earlier this year. Rowe used to hold the outright track record here on the 2.5-mile Sears Point race course in a Can-Am car until Jeff Brabham broke it a year ago in the Nissan. But right now, Bryce Cobb is doing his best to reset all of the records here at Sears.
You notice how smoothly he tries to get through that turn 7. That's a very important corner.
Back on board with Bob Wallach and the BF Goodrich Porsche, the Miller High Life machine for Jim Busby's team. And there is the air-cooled version of the same car. The 68 car has a water-cooled twin-turbo Porsche engine. This is the air-cooled single-turbo model that has won 51 Camel GT races over the years. At the keyboard, one of the finest Porsche racers or outright drivers of any kind in the world, Derek Bell from Pagham, England, the two-time world champion. Let's go down to Marty Reed on the pit lane.
You were mentioning about Bob Wallach getting off course. They gambled yesterday in qualifying, went with a more moderate compound, a little stiffer than everybody else qualified with, and the reason for that was they were expecting higher temperatures here on the track. It is not yet the kind of heat that is conducive for this tire to really be cooking out there this early. That could be the reason Wallach took a spin.
That was state-of-the-art just a year ago in Camel GT racing. This year, the Tom Walkinshaw team decided they needed a turbo car, so now Bryce Cobb has the 3-liter V6 turbo for the Jaguar team. But I got to tell you, the sound of that V12 Jaguar is worth hearing.
Yeah, the number of cylinders being on, and it's even got mufflers on it. The number of cylinders, they really scream, and even with mufflers, they're pretty loud.
In the early going, your leader is Bryce Cobb in the number 61 machine, followed by Jeff Brabham and Chip Robinson for Nissan. Fourth is Jochen Moss, the winner of this year's 24 Hours of Le Mans for Porsche. In fifth is Bob Wallach in the number 68 Miller High Life Porsche. We'll take a quick time out and come back after this. Down through the turn 9 area. Now they'll head into turn 10. Fastest turn on the racetrack, pulling incredible G-forces as they bend that car around, foot flat on the floor, headed towards turn 11.
This could be the difference in tires working, I think, at this stage of the race.
The Jaguar is on Dunlop tires from England. The Nissan is on Goodyears from Dayton, Ohio. Or is it Akron, Ohio? Forget. Anyway, Big Blue, the Goodyears on the Nissan.
Akron, Bob.
Okay, thank you, Bob. You are with Jeff Brabham as he tries to overtake. Recall a year ago when it was Brabham against John Nielsen in the V12 normally aspirated Jaguar. Martin Brundle had put Jaguar out front. Brabham ran down his teammate Nielsen to take the lead in turn 11, that tight hairpin you just saw earlier. And there you can see the leading car of Bryce Cobb out front as Jeff Brabham stalks him.
This carousel is a very exciting corner to go around, and you're staying inside, as you'll notice. You don't want to go outside on that kind of corner. Here's one of your faster parts of the course. A lot of passing and a lot of overtaking here. And as we've seen, a little bit of body contact, too.
Slower car moves aside, allowing the faster cars through. Now there's the BFG Porsche. This is Bob Wallach at the wheel through turn 11. Now the gentle left-hander of 12 and across the start-finish line. 2 years ago, in 1987, right here on the racetrack, Bob Wallach's car cut a tire, a rear tire, spun the car around, and he flipped 5 times in the most spectacular accident ever seen here at Sears Point. We had that race on ESPN, and you'll recall as they got Bob Wallach out of the car and everybody wondered what his condition might be, his teammate, Jochen Moss, driving for another Porsche, pulled up and asked the crew what his World Sports Car Championship teammate's condition might be. As relieved as the rest of us to find out that Wallach was okay except for a separated shoulder, Jochen Mass went on, put his foot down, and won the race. There is the third-place car of Jochen Mass, whose number we haven't called much this week yet.
This is the oldest chassis on the race course of the top-running GTP cars. This car was built in probably middle of '86, and Jochen, it's a tribute to Jochen and the Bayside crew that they've done as well as they have. It's an excellent job that he's doing in a car that, frankly, is a little outmoded compared to some of the other guys that are alleged to be driving more sophisticated cars. But Jochen's a fabulous driver, and the Bayside crew is an excellent crew. So those are two good ingredients, coupled with a good car, to do well here. And look for them to stick around during the whole race. They've got a good pit work. They know what they're doing there, so it'll be interesting to watch it.
And Jochen Mass, of course, one of the best drivers you could have behind the wheel of your Porsche. Walter Gerber and the crew keeping Bruce Levin's car on track. Meanwhile, up front, this is the turbocharged Jaguar. Tony Dow, the team manager, keeping track of the Jags, who brought only 2 cars to Sears Point after last week's race in San Antonio, in which Michel Ferté, the Frenchman, suffered a big accident. In fact, was clobbered by James Weaver accidentally after Ferté spun and blocked the racetrack, knocking out a Porsche and a Jaguar from this week's event. Price Cobb remains your leader. We'll be back. Back on the racetrack, we have a pass at Sears Point. Jeff Brabham gets underneath Price Cobb. Cobbs comes back, but the Nissan spools up a little quicker, and Brabham will maintain the lead. Jeff Brabham struck in turn 11, lined himself up perfectly, and squeezed under Price Cobb. Now he must do the stalking as he chases Brabham up to turn 2.
That was a very clean pass right down in turn 11, and you'll notice that both of those guys exercised some restraint.
Let's take another look at how it happened.
Just passing a light car. Here he is, right underneath.
And Jeff Brabham has been taking that line right down there on the tires all weekend long. This time it worked for him when he needed to. Right out to the pit wall he goes. Both drivers with their feet on the floor, but the Nissan came up to speed a little bit quicker, and now Jeff Brabham has the lead in about a 4-car length margin.
Price was concentrating on that Camel light car that they were coming up on. That's one of the responsibilities you got as a leader. And Jeff took advantage of that, just getting a little bit underneath him and just pulling a very clean pass.
Well, that's right. They came in. There was a driver change. John Andretti is now in the car. Bob Wallach got out, but it was done very slowly. Now they're sitting in a situation where they've done all the work on the car, and they're just waiting for a moment before they send him out. Obviously, something amiss before they send him out. He's back out on the track. We'll try and get hold of Bob Wallach and find out what the problem is.
Early indications are a misfire in the engine. Could be something having to do with the electronic engine management system. John Andretti into the race car now. And he'll be making his way along well down in the pack. He was shown in 12th position when they pitted the car. And now John Andretti goes out probably well in arrears of that.
It's a water-cooled engine that Porsche has run very well over in Europe, but somehow for IMSA, they're just not able to push the boost through it or run as much fuel as they can in this kind of engine, and it's been a problem for them a lot this season. I can tell you they're working on it, but it's not doing them any good this morning or this afternoon if they've got a misfire this early on.
The Porsches, like the other turbocharged cars in the series, including the Nissan of our leader Jeff Brabham, carry turbo restrictors. Little rings that limit the amount of air allowed into the turbochargers, one of the ways IMSA uses to equalize the competition between the more powerful turbos and the normally aspirated machines. And there's been a lot of talk about whether the 54mm restrictors on the single turbo cars and the pair of 38mm restrictors on the twin turbo cars are just choking all of the excitement out of the cars. Hasn't been the case thus far. Let's go back to the pit lane.
Well, Bob Wallach, it's awful early for you to be in the pits. What went wrong?
Well, we're still experimenting with this new car and car settings, and we went very stiff on the front springs because it makes the car nicer to drive, but obviously it's hard on tires.
And that was the problem?
So we blistered tires on the front because, first of all, the springs are too stiff for this track. And second, we decided on a compound which we knew was going to be marginal, but I mean, to win, sometimes you have to gamble.
Any problems with a misfire at all?
I was misfiring early on, but then we turned the boost down. I had a little bit too much boost for the start.
And so Bob Wallach now out of the race. Springs a little too big in the front end, I gather.
Well, you can overspring a car. There's no doubt about it. And if you overspring it, you can put a lot of pressure on the tires. And that's the kind of mistake that they could have tested out. And it's one of those things that, you know, in a race conditions, things change. And that's a tough break for not only Bob, but John as well.
Back at Sears Point International Raceway, you're watching the number 63 Camel Lights car. This is Jim Downing from Atlanta, Georgia, the leader in the Camel Lights class for smaller, non-turbocharged prototype cars. This is the car he calls Kudzu, violating the tradition that says you will not have a green race car. Jim Downing trying to move up in the Camel Lights points. He presently stands 4th behind Scott Schubach, Charles Morgan, and Tom Hessert in a dandy battle for the Camel Lights Championship. Downing is a 3-time champion. He developed this class for smaller, less expensive cars, won the first 3 championships, gave up last year's to Tom Hessert, and he's back in the thick of it once again.
The green race car issue has been put to bed by Lotus in '65 at Indianapolis, and then again by the Porsche team in their Indy car. Now that they've won one. There was even word that the Penske car with the Miller logo, which had some green in it, in kart might be a problem, but they obviously disproved that as well.
Where does the tradition come from, Rob? Do you know?
I'm not sure. There's another tradition related to peanuts and peanut shells that goes back a long, long way.
Well, never let the facts get in the way of a good story. I like the idea of no green race cars. Once again, Chip Robinson looks to the inside, and this time he gets it done.
Jochen let him by. He knew that he was a quicker car, and it's early enough in the race. Jochen doesn't want to cause any trouble. Chip pulled a good pass on him.
So move Robinson up into the 3rd spot, demoting Moss to 4th. And your order is Brabham, Cobb, Robinson, Moss, and Costas Los. And the Pontiac Spice has now moved up into 5th position ahead of Willie T. Ribbs for Toyota. Derek Bell still running in 7th in a Porsche. 8th is Toyota, 9th is Jaguar, 10th is Chevrolet. Now there is the battle for 6th. The number 99 car, Willie T. Ribbs, the new Dan Gurney designed and built Toyota Eagle, as opposed to the Group C design of the other car on that team. And right behind him is Derek Bell, all over him in the 67 Porsche.
This will be interesting because you got Willie Ribbs, who's not only learning a new car, but learning a new series and a new driving technique with the GTP car, being followed and, may I say, harried by a real pro in Derek Bell, who's obviously raced these cars for eons. And it'll be interesting to see how they both made up with one another. Hopefully it'll continue to be this interesting. It's a terrific race they're having.
Willie T. Ribbs won many races here at Sears Point. It is basically his home track, being from the San Jose area. Willie says despite all of the races he won and as fast as he ever went driving for Dan Gurney's GTO sedan team in Toyota Celicas, coming out here in the GTP car, he is lapping 11 seconds quicker than he ever did in a GTO sedan. Willie and his teammates suffered a setback last week, but still Willie T. feels that the Toyota team has momentum on their side.
The car's been getting better and better. I think since Road America, we've been going quicker and quicker, and we've been learning more and more. And I think we found a baseline. Now we got to fine-tune it. We were good at San Antonio. We led a little while. And now we're here in Sears Point, so if we can just keep the momentum going, we'll be happy.
Boy, they had quite a moment in that San Antonio race. Willie T. was actually leading the event when the engine cover came off the car. Air got underneath, and that sucker just ripped up into the air and disintegrated. Pretty spectacular stuff. Derek Bell in the single-turbo, flat-six, air-cooled Porsche 962 that he has driven to so many victories in so many far corners of the world in his many years as a factory driver for the Porsche team. Always a big favorite on the Camel GT Series. Now, he has taken over 5th place, passing Willie T. Ribbs. Costas Los in the Pontiac has pitted. And so now your order is Brabham, Nielsen, Robinson, Davy Jones, Robinson, and there is Price Cobb now in the pits. Let's get caught up with the action in the Jaguar pits with Marty Reed.
Well, Jan Lammers is going in, Price Cobb is coming out, and this is the one thing that's going to be debated. The driver change cost Jaguar last year in the minds of many people as far as victory was concerned. I asked him earlier before the race, in typical British style, well, we employ 2 drivers, so we'll use 2 drivers. They're in and out and underway.
Well, they'd go through the shift like that anyway. Price has just finished his normal stint, so they'll put Jan in, and it's their strategy is a lot more firm than just the fact that they've got a lot of people employed.
A little bit of an early pit stop for the Jaguar team, less than 50 minutes into the race, which is expected to go some 2 hours.
Bell looked like he slowed up a little.
The 67 car, Derek Bell's definitely slowing. Passed quickly by the Jaguar Turbo. Let's see if we can catch up with the 67 car. There he is coming to the back of your screen. Maybe just missed a shift or something. Looks like he may be back up to speed once again.
He sure pulled out of it for a minute there. Here's Jan going around. It'll take him just a half a lap or something to get acclimated, and then he'll start standing on it in his inimitable fashion.
I was going to say, Jan Lammers probably takes a little less time than that to warm up. I think he gets out of bed at full speed in the morning. He is really quick.
Quite a guy, far diminutive, but quick with the right foot.
In fact, the 61 Jaguar, now being driven by Lammers, was directed by Price Cobb to the lead for the first 17 laps of the race. Then was taken over by the Nissan of Jeff Brabham, who has led since then for another 17 laps. So we have 34 complete of 75 laps coming your way today here on ESPN. There you see Jan Lammers from the Netherlands, once an instructor in the famous skid school, a racing school at Zandvoort, Holland. The number 98 Toyota behind him. That is Juan Manuel Fangio, nephew of what many people think was the greatest driver, certainly in Formula One of all time, 5-time world driving champion Juan Manuel Fangio. Here is the number 83 Nissan. Speaking of clockwork, this guy invented the term and embodies it in Camel GT racing. Looking for the team's 9th victory of the season, Jeff Brabham. He is your leader. His teammate Chip Robinson is second, and there are problems in the Toyota pits. Here's Marty.
Well, we've got both Toyotas in the pit at the same time. The number 99 Toyota has been in here for over a lap. They are working on the back end of it. It looks as though they may have a spark plug or something fouled. They're not being able to get it fired. Meanwhile, Juan Manuel Fangio brings the other Toyota in, and they're trying to split the crews to make sure they get the stops done and get the 98 back out there.
One of the things they got to be careful when both cars come in is to make sure they don't violate the IMSA rule with too many guys over the wall.
Now our leader is in. Here is Jeff Brabham with what we anticipate will be his one and only pit stop. His left hand goes up to the fuel meter to reset it, so he always has an accurate indication of how much fuel is in the car. A moment ago I said going for their 9th victory. Let me correct that. Going for their 10th victory of the season. Let's hear from Rick DeBrule.
This is indeed a routine stop. Talked with Ashley Page, crew chief, just a few moments ago. He said this is strictly routine. Put fuel, put the tires in. They have a firm philosophy. When you change a tire, you change all 4. Taking a little bit longer in the tail end, but he is back out on the track.
Big indicator when you go through a pit stop is when the car goes down on the ground, you start putting her masher into gear and get going. That's the primary signal that we boys used, and it seems like most everybody else does as well.
Well, we had a problem earlier this year at Portland when Chip Robinson in this car, the number 84 machine, was in fact given that signal. The car came down, but they hadn't disengaged the fuel hose yet. And those of you who watched that event sat on the edge of your seats with the rest of us as the fuel hose trailed Robinson out of the pit. Fortunately, nobody seriously hurt. The hose eventually became detached on the racetrack, but boy, that was a close moment.
That was a very lucky period of time.
Now here's the V12 Jaguar in the pits, and Rick is there.
It is rush hour in pit lane. Right now, the number 60 Jaguar has come in. Davy Jones has gotten out. He is fastening up all the belts for John Nielsen, who's going to go back out. Hand is up. The tires have been fitted. The fuel is off. They are now trying to fit that flap that goes over the rear tire. They've got that done, and John Nielsen is back out.
Boy, he's out with a vengeance, too. He's got the hammer down and nearly twitched it there.
They call those flaps spats, and it apparently helps the ground effects on the automobile, and they've been more successful in holding them on the car than a lot of other people have.
You'll notice over the rear wheels where the colors don't stop, there are the spats on the car. Now here's Chip Robinson coming in. He was in second place. Excuse me, he was in the lead after his teammate Jeff Brabham pitted. He parks it right in front of the cone, and the team goes to work. Here's Rick.
And once again, right next door to where the Jaguar just pitted, the Nissan has come in. Still, just standard pit stop. They are simply changing the 4 tires. They're putting in the fuel. Once again, the fuel that flows so much faster, as Bob was mentioning earlier here, than it does in the Group C races over in Europe. This is a relatively fast pit stop. They're getting the windshield clean. Hands are up. The car is down. And Chip Robinson now back out on the track.
Wes Moss calling the shots for Chip Robinson's pit stop. Ashley Page, the overall crew chief, is handling Jeff Brabham's car this weekend, and nobody does these pit stops faster than the Electromotive Nissan team. The Kodak people sponsor a pit stop. The Kodak Copiers Pit Crew Contest, a part of each Camel GT weekend, and the 2 fastest times turned in thus far this year in that pit stop contest are by the 2 Electromotive Nissan cars, 83 and 84. They'll shoot it out later this year for a nice fat $20,000 prize. You're back aboard with Jeff Brabham. As we watch the defending Camel GT champion at work, Chip Robinson was your leader before that pit stop. We'll get things resorted when we return to Sears Point. Despite winning 19 of their last 24 races and leading in both the Drivers' and Manufacturers' Championships, you can hardly blame Team Nissan for looking over its collective shoulder. A year ago, with Jeff Brabham's driving title in hand, Nissan arrived at Del Mar, California for the season's final race, needing a victory to clinch the manufacturer's crown. Instead, Brabham took this wild ride into the trackside concrete, and Nissan lost the title by a single point. This year, Nissan appears to have things under control once again, with 9 wins in 12 races. But last month in Portland, Oregon, a befuddled official threw the checkered flag 3 laps early. Jaguar was declared winner, whereupon Nissan promised to appeal to the bitter end, and Brabham's frustration showed through.
If it comes out against us, it's a 10-point swing, and obviously that's very critical, especially when you consider that Nissan lost the Manufacturers' Championship by 1 point last year. So, you know, it goes way beyond just who won or who lost the race.
There's 2 things we want to do here today. A, win the race, and B, win the championship. And this is a good place to start doing it, and that's exactly what we intend to do.
And that's exactly what they did, winning the next 2 races at Topeka and San Antonio, and arriving at Sears Point on the brink of a championship. Back at Sears Point, Jeff Brabham leads the race, and with a first or second place by either he or teammate Chip Robinson, Nissan will clinch that long-awaited and much sought-after Manufacturers' Championship. Over the years, this car has taken a beating. They called it fast but unreliable in the early going. They crashed more often than they finished in their first year or 2, but Don Devendorf stayed with it. Kaz Kasner came on as Nissan's motorsports manager in North America, and he stayed the program as well. They have gradually brought the car around, and right now it is the most dominating machine in any form of racing this side of the McLarens in Formula One. And having taken over, Jan Lammers, the number 61 car, circulating in 2nd position, about 15 seconds down to your leader, Jeff Brabham. Up the hill he goes into turn 2. Hard on the gas, over the brow, downhill into turn 3 and 3A.
His car doesn't seem to be working very well, based on the way it was with Price earlier on.
This is turn 4, the sharp right-hander, and a downhill run to the right-hander at turn 5. And then uphill and over the brow, and then downhill to the sweeping left-hander, turn 6, the carousel.
Yeah, this is a turbo car that's, in essence, brand new in racing terms. They've had it about 6 months. They started from scratch in a turbo car, never having run one before, either here or in Europe. And they've done a very good job to evolve it as quickly as they have.
Now there is the number 3 car, 84 on the side of the machine. 3rd on the racetrack is Chip Robinson, the points leader in the series. He is 5 points behind his teammate Jeff Brabham with 20 points to win, 16 for 2nd, 14 for 3rd, 12 for 4th, 10th for 5th, and then 1 point separating the rest of the positions through 15th. Robinson will be trying to stay close to his teammate, who is leading at this point, to maintain his edge in the Drivers' Championship. Interesting that this ride that Chip Robinson has was originally offered to Bryce Cobb after some midwinter testing. Cobb elected to go with the Jaguar team in part because it was made clear to him that with the electromotive Nissan, he would be the #2 driver to Jeff Brabham. Bryce said no thanks. They asked Chip Robinson. He said, I'll do it. And right now, Chip Robinson, ironically, is leading the series over his own teammate. The key to fast lapping in a GTP car is downforce, which holds the car to the racetrack and allows it to turn in more quickly. The key to making downforce are these Venturi tunnels that run the length of the car. Generally speaking, the more air you can move through the tunnels, the more downforce you can make. On the Toyota Eagle, the tunnels rise well above the rear axles, and the key to making tall tunnels is the engine. The Toyota's 4-cylinder takes up very little of the engine bay, leaving lots of room for taller, wider tunnels. That's why Porsche teams are at something of a disadvantage. The traditional flat-6 Porsche engine design takes up so much room up top that the Venturi tunnels below are narrower and shallower, moving less air and making less ground-hugging downforce. So why, you ask, doesn't Porsche just design a newer, narrower engine? The answer is money, and the fact that this design has won 51 Camel GT races. This is the view outside the Nissan windshield. Jeff Brabham hard at work. He has been in this car since the beginning, took over second place at the green light, made a pit stop, came back on the lead, and has held it ever since. Here is the battle for second place. Robinson in the 84 car to the outside. He has already punted the Jaguar once, looking for a way by. Couldn't find it that time in turn 11.
He's really right on Yan, and you can see where they kind of touched by the left front headlight of the Nissan car. It's a little knackered there. They're racing tough. Yan is doing his best to try to stay in front.
Imagine being a car length or two apart at about 140 miles an hour. That's what it looks like, and you can't see the track in front of you, undulating as this Sears Point International Raceway surface does. You've really got to have a lot of faith in the guy ahead of you.
There they are into 10, now down to 11, and you'll see all action taking place down here.
As Robinson looks to the outside, maybe he'll try to get underneath this time, coming off of turn 11. He gets up, looks like he's got a door next to him, and I think he's got the position as they come at you. No, Lammers is going to hang on. They're going to go door to door into turn 1. Robinson decides discretion is the better part of valor and drops back into the position one more time.
It's rare that you can pass somebody on the outside, especially if you're as evenly matched as these two cars are. It was a smart move on Chip just to hold off.
Whoa, Lammers that time pulled up on the wrong side of a Camel Lights car, didn't see him coming. The Nissan now has the momentum, and quickly Chip Robinson takes advantage and squeezes by into second position.
You can bust stuff if you go off a course that hard. He might have hurt the car a little.
Squeezed off in the turn 3A area by a slower car. In 1988, Jim Downing nearly accomplished what no driver ever has, winning a Camel GT championship without winning a single race. He came up just short, losing the title to Tom Hessert in the final race of the season at Del Mar, California. In 1987, Downing, who suggested and named the Lights class for smaller, non-turbocharged cars, won his third consecutive championship with just one victory at Portland, Oregon. In his campaign to reclaim the title this season, Downing knew the make-or-break race would come at Portland.
This track had predicted the winner of the GTP series for many years. You won here, you're going to win the series. Well, the 3 previous years, I'd won here. 3 in a row, and I'd won the series. Then last year, I lost here, and I lost the series. So I'm taking this weekend real seriously, and I'm not superstitious.
As the 1989 season draws to a climax, Downing is in a 4-way fight for the championship, having driven his admittedly down-on-power Mazda to 2 victories at Watkins Glen, New York, and at Portland. The final standings will prove whether Portland is the championship make-or-break victory Jim Downing, father of the Camel Lights class, thinks it is. And meanwhile, up front, we have a battle for second place. The 84 Nissan of Chip Robinson now has the retired, and by that I mean new tires on all 4 corners, 61 turbocharged Jaguar right behind him. Jan Lammers now says, hey, I've got the tires that I wanted in the first place. Let's see if I can take that position back from you. They're into turn 7. Meanwhile, Linda Ludeman has pitted and let Scott Schubert bat into the car, as we suspected she might, after making the required 2 laps by a Camel Lights co-driver. Schubert is back in the car, although he runs 3rd place in the class at best at this point as a result of making that quick stop. 2 stops, I should say. Howard Katz has taken over for Jim Downing, and he runs 12th overall, 1st in class, over the number 55 car of Ludweiler, Marvin, and Roca.
Chip is following the same line that Jan was earlier on. It's kind of ironic, the change of events here. They probably put a fairly soft set of tires on Jan to make sure that he could go for broke here. Only a few laps left in the race, and we can keep running, and with 61 laps completed. It'll be interesting to see whether the tires hold up on Lammers, and see how his carbon fiber brakes work as he tries to overtake here.
We heard earlier Bryce Cobb say that his Dunlops went off after 7 laps early in the race. If that's the case, Jan Lammers may have to get his pass accomplished quickly, because we have at least twice that remaining in the race here at Sears. And so we're going to have to see a pass from the Jaguar, and it's not going to happen now. Back at Sears Point International Raceway in the hills of Sonoma, California, Bob Barsha, Rob Dyson, Rick DeBrule, and Marty Reed with you for the Lincoln Mercury California Camel Grand Prix here on ESPN. Your leader is the number 83 car of Jeff Brabham, followed by Chip Robinson and a sister machine as Nissan rolls on toward a possible manufacturer's championship today. Jochen Maas and Dominic Dobson share the 3rd place Porsche, followed by the Jaguar, the normally aspirated machine, with John Nielsen at the controls. Costas Los has a V8-powered Pontiac Spice into 5th position, followed by Jan Lammers after that stop-and-go penalty in 6th. And 1 lap down, Juan Manuel Fangio in the number 98 Group C Toyota. Let's go down to Marty Reed in the pit lane.
Well, I'm standing here with Don Devendorf. He's writing down the last lap times from both machines. I'm going to try and get a word from Don. What will be the strategy if the 2 cars get nose to tail?
Just hold on a second.
Okay, he's doing a lap separation back to 3rd place. We'll give him just a second here. Writes down plus 16. So now, what will be the strategy if they get nose to tail?
I can't hear you.
What will be the strategy if they get nose to tail?
Basically, the lead is going to just lead the race. We're not trying to take anybody out. Just win the race and maintain our positions.
So Chip has to finish 2nd then, the way it stands?
Well, I think it's going to be self-evident. They're both at the same kind of speeds, and somebody has to probably take somebody else out to pass, and we're not going to take that chance.
Okay, so there you have it. It's going to be this way as you see it.
That's the way to do it. As a car owner, you tell the boys what to do, and by golly, they're supposed to do it. And that is apparent. I think it would be difficult for Chip, frankly, to catch him.
We had a car off the racetrack there. I believe that was the number 19 car, Ferdinand DeLessep and Jay Cochran, a Buick-powered Taiga racer.
Yeah, kind of slipped around on the inimitable turn 7.
Jeff Brabham trying to make it all moot. In an interesting season for the Nissan team. They ran so strongly earlier this year at the 24 Hours of Daytona. They won the 12 Hours of Sebring, eliminating that last knock against the Nissan as perhaps a sprint car more than a long-distance endurance sports racer. They have won everything just about that you can win except a 24-hour race, and they may well take care of that fairly soon. Now here is a dice, the number 33 machine of Costas Los, being pressed by the 2 Jaguars in 4th and 5th position.
The interesting thing here is to see the difference between the acceleration of the normally aspirated Jaguar and the Turbo Jaguar. The Turbo Jaguar is the car that's right behind. I guess it would be John Nielsen.
Nielsen in the 61 car, the 12-cylinder, 6-liter Jaguar, right there at the bottom of your picture, followed by the other machine, subtly different in aerodynamics, and underneath the engine hood, even more dramatic differences. A 3-liter, twin-turbocharged V6. Up front there you see the teammates, Jeff Brabham to the right, Chip Robinson to the left. And as they continue to run in lockstep in the closing laps of today's race, we'll take another quick timeout and be back in a moment. Jeff Brabham continues to lead. Behind him, teammate Chip Robinson. They have been given team orders, as you heard, from team owner Don Devendorf to finish in this order with 2 laps remaining around the 2.5-mile Sears Point International Raceway circuit. And it looks as though that's the way it will be.
They're following team orders, and that's the way you win championships, and that's the way you win manufacturers' championships as well. Everybody exists for everybody else on the team, and nobody takes front or back seat. This is the way it was set up to be, and you maintain that, and that's the discipline that you've got to have in a team that's with Nissan's proven proficiency. They've done a good job today.
Well, you touched on the important thing there. With a lot of money being invested and a lot at stake in these manufacturer and driver championships, you don't want embarrassing mistakes on national TV especially. Speaking of national TV, you hop aboard with Jeff Brabham, your chauffeur. Clear track in front of him as he goes down through the S's, approaching turn 9 right here, and then the trickiest and probably the fastest turn on this racetrack. Here is turn 10. Let's pull about 2.5 G's with Jeff, and then down the backside as he reaches over a little bit. Tweaks one of the dials.
His speed, they're not slowing down very much versus their race speed, if at all. You lose your rhythm to such a degree. It's the wind whistling by the bodywork or whatever. You want to make sure that you maintain that speed to keep your rhythm up. Otherwise, you can get into big trouble. As you go slower, you can get more screwed up. So they're staying at a pretty good race pace.
Unofficially, last lap here at Sears Point. We anticipate a checkered flag next time around should they finish in this formation. Chip Robinson in the 84 car will be second and will maintain his points lead by 1 point over teammate Jeff Brabham. Between them, they will move well out in front of Price Cobb of Jaguar, and it will be an intramural Nissan battle for the Drivers' Championship. It'll be coming your way from Tampa or Del Mar, depending on what happens. And it looks like it's going to be another exciting conclusion to the Camel GT season here on ESPN. Brabham has the headlights on. Robinson behind him does not. But they only need to negotiate the backside of the 2.5-mile Sears Point Raceway before they will earn a well-deserved checkered flag. Somewhat reminiscent of the team finishes at Le Mans and some of the great European venues. No way to display your domination any better than to finish breezing first and second, as though that's the way it was meant to be all the time. And in the past 2 seasons of Camel GT racing, sometimes it seems like that's the way it was meant to be. New cars coming for Team Nissan next year. In fact, there's a rumor afoot that you might be able to purchase one of these cars when they bring the new ones out, if you have a pretty safe checkbook. The checkered flag flies, and Jeff Brabham has won the 10th race of the season for the Electromotive Nissan team. Chip Robinson finished a tight second, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see that picture in your local enthusiast magazine sometime in the very near future. Another terrific performance by the Nissan team. A wave from one driver to the other on a job well done, and we'll be back to meet our winner in just a moment.
Jeff Brabham, it is 1 championship down, 1 to go. You won the Manufacturers' Championship. Towards the end of the race, you had Chip Robinson right on your tail. Were you thinking about San Antonio at all?
No, I don't think that was going to happen again. But, you know, the Nissan team did a great job. I think we did, between Goodyear and ourselves, made a really good decision on, on what tires to run for the race. They weren't the quickest in qualifying, but I think they're the most consistent, and it really was the key to winning today.
Was it just that simple? No problems at all?
No, not really. The car was really good. And, the track was hot and slippery, and you have your normal problems with lap traffic, but it was a pretty trouble-free race for us. We had a great pit stop, and I could see the Jaguar was getting into tire problems pretty early on, so I thought we had a chance, and it really worked out well for us.
More than a chance to victory here at Sears Point.
And with that, Jeff Brabham scores his 9th victory of 1989 and sets a new record for 2-year success in the Camel GT. Here are your final results. Brabham and Robinson in a Nissan 1-2, Nielsen and Jones 3rd, Cobb and Lammers 4th, Fangio and Olsen 5th for Toyota.